Welcome back, folks and friends. Connecting Dots here. October 11, 2014. It's roughly 11 p.m. here on the West Coast. This is my second video of the day. I'll get into my first video in a second, but first, if you haven't heard here, fresh off the press, well, there's a typhoon that's battering Japan. This is a second typhoon here to hit Japan in less than a week. This story here mentions how there's already 28 injured, and well, the government here has ordered 150,000 people to evacuate their homes because of flooding. Now, even fresher off the press, as you know, they're already a day ahead on their calendar date. So here in Tokyo, Associated Press is reporting that they're up to 35 people that have been reported injured, with again 150,000 people having to evacuate and more than 60,000 homes without power. Now, what's interesting, again, fresh off the press, Japan Times, just 2 hours ago, this story just came out here. It says tritium surges, yes, at Fukushima, and it's all tied into the typhoon, even though, well, you see at the end of the story here, TEPCO says they don't know why. But it goes on to say here that Tokyo Electric Power Company said that on Saturday, the concentration of radioactive tritium in the groundwater at the stricken Fukushima No. 1 nuclear plant had surged more than tenfold this month. It goes on to say that the level of tritium in groundwater sample collected Thursday from a well, and by the way, they're testing it at 34 different wells, east of the plant's No. 2 reactor, measured 150,000 becquerels per liter, a record high for a sample from the well and up more than 10 times the level a week before. The well is located close to the plant's port of the Pacific. That's important here. It's right before it's water is obviously washed through the basement, and it's being taken through past this well and on its way out to the port. Now, what's interesting, it goes on to say that this was all caused by this typhoon, which hit Eastern earlier this week, and it likely affected the groundwater at the plant. Well, that's what he's saying there, but eventually he goes on to say something he's not quite sure why. But it also goes on to say here that in groundwater sample from the well on Thursday, radioactive materials that emit beta rays, such as Strontium-90, also hit a record high of 1.2 million becquerels, according to the company. This is very interesting, and I'll get into that in a second here. I'll keep reading because it goes on to say that at another well, east of the No. 2 reactor again here, that groundwater sample contained a record of 2.1 million becquerels of a beta ray emitting radioactive substance, nearly double the level a week earlier. The level of radioactive cesium in the sample rose 70% to 68,000 becquerels. As I said here, they're taking it at 34 different wells around these 4 different nuclear plants. So again here, back with this Strontium-90, this is why I've started this whole thing a long time before this whole Expedition for Life funding, or a scam I call it now. I was talking about the strontium explosion according to this German study here, and I'll keep referring to this German study because they kept talking about it was a mock study of a Fukushima type nuclear meltdown, and it said that around the 1,000-day mark, you would start seeing levels of strontium starting to rise. And by the way, that's what I was starting to cover back around that 1,000-day mark. 1,040, I think, is when I first picked up the Strontium-90. So regardless here, it went on to say that the Strontium-90 would continue reaching high levels here. Okay, that's what that peak is, for 5,000 days, and would continue emitting for 50,000 days after the initial start of the meltdown. So yes, this is why I've been asking for this gamma spectrometer. The donations, the funding for it is so I can sit here on the West Coast, and as the levels continue spewing out of Fukushima, if it gets here to the West Coast, I'll have a type of Geiger counter that can locate and name the specific isotope. And as I'm worried about the Fukushima 90, if the Strontium 90, if they're correct, this German study, that's going to be our largest concern. Okay, moving along here, folks, because I'll leave a link down below on my YouTube channel, Connecting Dots 2. If you haven't seen this video or this one, very interesting stuff. And I'll mention again that this starfish death interview with the Banfield Marine Director is just the first one here. I have more groundbreaking information coming out here as I've been given contacts with university researchers that actually did some of the research on the starfish. And here you get to see how this whole Fukushima fraud has ended up in the local Sunshine West Coast papers. Yeah, Beautiful Girl by Dana is actually named right in the local paper. Okay, so moving along here. Wow, should we be concerned about this super typhoon about to hit Fukushima? Well, I'm not here to fear. It's all about bringing information here. And this gentleman here, Michael Maka, a nuclear expert at GRS, a German-based organization specializing in the fields of nuclear safety and radioactive waste management, says in a DW interview that while it is likely that some rainwater will mix with the contaminated water in the basements of the reactor buildings, and thus more radioactivity may be washed into the sea, no critical scenarios are expected given that the vital functions of the plant are secured and out of the reach of the floodwaters. Okay, folks, that's the way I feel about it also. No fear here. Okay, another weird story here, and I can't read all the stuff here. I had to translate it, so basically I'll leave you with a picture while I look over at another screen and tell you what this is all about. So it goes on to say here that starting around in July 2014, for about 3 months, the beaches of Soma, Haragama, Obama beaches of Soma, that's what it is. The Haragama, Obama beaches of Soma, the police went searching for missing persons because of this massive tsunami, right? And they were using a special underground radar here that was developed at the Tohoku University by the professor Motoyuki Sato. And it says that this special radar here can penetrate the Earth 2 meters deep, 2 meters wide, and it weighs 60 kilograms, so it's quite heavy, and it can penetrate, as I was saying, 2 meters deep. And he was saying here that it was used in a search of the Miyagi Iwata Prefecture for the first time, but he's hoping that he's going to be able to use it in the the zone that no one can enter. And that's what this next story is all about here, how they have 25,000 people that will never be able to go back home because a large swath of land downwind of the 4 Fukushima Daiichi reactors smashed by a 50-meter tsunami in March 2011 is so contaminated by radioactivity that it will not be officially safe to return for more than 100 years. That's right. So it goes on to say here, tens of thousands of more have left their homes outside the most contaminated zone, will choose never to return because of the dangers. Smart choice. Okay, folks, so that's your heads up here on Fukushima and what's taking place. And as I said, I'll leave a link down below if you want to go watch this wicked interview. And as I said, I got more coming up this week. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoy the info.